all the research pointed to the fact that 50, 60, 70%, depending on the research you looked at, said that that amount of people were using spreadsheets, shoeboxes, deferring it to tax time and then dumping it on an accountant. And we looked at that and thought there's got to be a better way to solve that problem. And really, that's why we got passionate about this space.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a good one. Our guest is the CEO and co-founder of Wave, an award-winning financial services software company. Kirk Simpson, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
It's great to have you, and I'm looking forward to hearing this story because you've built a lot and had an amazing journey in this industry. And so I'm excited for our listeners to learn a little bit about you. So Kirk, to start off, can you tell us about your career journey leading up to this point?
Yeah, sure. So just on the personal side first, I'm in my mid-40s, married, live in Toronto, 3 kids, 14, 12, and 9. And in 2009, my co-founder and I, James Lockery, got serious about starting Wave. And in 2010, near the end of 2010, we launched the product. Before that, I had started a couple of tech companies. My first in my early 20s was, of all things, an adventure webcasting company, which most people really don't know what I mean. But bottom line is it went bankrupt in 2000 when the whole .com scene sort of exploded. But a really good sort of lesson dropping out of university to start that business on what it was going to take to be a successful entrepreneur. It certainly didn't work out that time. I then went to work for a bunch of Canadian large media companies that were making the transition from print to digital, and had some amazing experiences working in those environments where you could be very entrepreneurial and where the whole move to online was happening very rapidly. I started a second business along the way, another outdoor adventure-themed website. I'm not sure what sort of brought me to that space other than wanting to do it myself. Yeah, exactly. And that one had a very small acquisition, and I learned along the way that you couldn't do these things part-time. And so that really led me into Wave in 2010 and the journey that came from there.
Wow. That's an interesting thought in terms of you can't do these things, or it's difficult to do these things part-time. Say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think, especially I shouldn't say especially. I mean, maybe it pertains, I really only know the tech space, but, myself and a couple of other co-founders, as well as our technology team, we were all trying to do it, on the side while managing full-time jobs and growing families. And, it's just very difficult to move at pace, which you need to do in the tech space. And, for somebody especially, I mean, I'm not technical myself, but I can only imagine for, an engineer to be, writing code during the day and then trying to get their motivation up to do it, in the evening. It's hard. We all need sort of mental breaks. And so we found that as much as we loved the space and really wanted to push the envelope on things, that we weren't getting enough stuff done to bring value to customers quick enough. And so it really sort of fizzled out.
Wow. And so what was it that had you make that leap? Was it, because and I'm sure many of our listeners in their journey, right? It's often there's things that are done part-time or on the side, and then you need to make the leap, and you made that leap. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I think it was always in my blood. I had an interesting experience where at the time that we made the leap, and I mean both myself and my co-founder, but quite frankly, also, people, I think, underestimate how important, the spouse is, in my case, my wife, because it's a big leap to make. She was actually pregnant with our third child.
Oh boy.
And was about to go on maternity leave. And we made the leap to start this company, which is kind of crazy and ridiculous. But I think for me, what really got me was just, years and years of wanting to do something and just getting to a point where I felt like, why am I not taking the leap? Is it because of, the mortgage payment and the car payment and all of those kinds of things? And that's a crummy way to live your life, is just to feel like you're in a box and you can't get out. And I think I had the opportunity of setting up, a 6-month consulting gig on the side that allowed me to pay some bills and take some chances. And I think, I could do so relatively responsibly. But at the end of the day, it was really just the feeling. And my wife was very supportive of this, of, life is short, and that dream can sometimes just hang over your head and feel like, it's never attainable. It's never the right time. And I think sometimes, you just got to take a leap of faith. And I think in some ways that's what we did.
Really speaks to the entrepreneur in you, because you had a couple of starts and stops. I mean, failures, as you say, learning experiences. That would be, start to look at all of the adding it up. The wife is about to have another child, and you've already got a big family, and yet you still embarked upon that journey, and definitely says a lot about your wife and the supportive family that you have, for sure. I always love hearing those stories, and I think we can all learn from, when you're passionate about something and committed to it, you make it happen. And sometimes you have to burn those boats to really put your all into it to really make it happen.
I think that's right. And I think, not to make a joke of it, but in some ways, I think entrepreneurs are a little bit, off our rocker a little bit. It's definitely not the easy path. I just think that at times it's just a calling that you just feel very much that, you're sacrificing some of yourself if you don't go after it. So here we are.
So now you started Wave. So your third child is how old?
My third child is now just turned 10.
Just turned 10. So Wave, I'm guessing we're like in around the 10-year anniversary mark here for Wave. So it's like your third born celebrates along with Wave, I guess, on every birthday almost.
That's right. So we started thinking about it in mid-2009, launched it at the end of 2010. So we call the launch the anniversary date, but you're essentially right about sort of the journey has been, almost a decade.
Wow. Very cool. Well, let's talk about that. So Wave was born, this idea. Tell us a little bit about why you thought this would be a good idea and what inspired it and a little bit of that journey.
Yeah, so I think, both my co-founder James and I, we were talking about a lot of different business ideas at the time. In 2008, 2009, we were thinking about starting something, and we were talking about a lot of different things. And James was the CTO of a small business tax prep company. And so, he really knew the pain of, the typical financial life of a small business owner is, disorganized, and they don't have time for it. They don't love it. And so it remains a stress point for them, especially at tax time. And coming off those two failed startups, I was passionate about solving something that I knew for people like me, it gets in the way of and takes away some of the joy of running your small business, is the stuff in the background that can get you in a lot of trouble, can get you into financial difficulties, but is not something that you're passionate about, or in many cases have much experience doing. And so we just started talking about it. Obviously at the time and still today, QuickBooks was the dominant market leader for those that choose to buy accounting software. But when we looked at the space and saw how big what we call micro small business space, so 0 to 9 employee, sub $2 million of revenue, that's 95% of all businesses in the US and in Canada are in that market size. and many, many new ones get created every month. And so when we looked at that, and then we looked at the penetration of QuickBooks into that market, it's actually quite low in terms of the percentage of users that are using something like QuickBooks versus the overall market size. And all the research pointed to the fact that 50, 60, 70%, depending on the research you looked at, said that that amount of people were using spreadsheets, shoeboxes, deferring it to tax time and then dumping it on an accountant. And we looked at that and thought there's got to be a better way to solve that problem. And really that's why we got passionate about this space. Added to which, and I'll be quiet after this, but added to which the space for the average small business owner, causes so much friction for them on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. How could we make it so that, given the new type of software that was coming out, the new capabilities around mobile and bank connections and all this kind of stuff, how could we make it so that they could have insight about what's happening in their business without doing a lot of work behind the scenes to get there?
Wow. So you built quite a company from 2010 on. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of small businesses using this platform. What are some of your learnings around getting to know the market and understand their needs, and what you saw evolve as you were building this company?
Yeah, so looking back on it, we've made a ton of mistakes along the way. And in some ways, big misses, but we've been lucky, in a couple of different areas. Number one is it is impossible not to be passionate about serving small business owners and brave entrepreneurs. I mean, it's a joy, honestly, every day to go to work to try and solve some of the pain for that group, because, they're just pushing themselves every day. They're trying new things. They want to be the masters of their own destiny. They're, doing great work. In a lot of ways, they're driving, the world's economy. It's really a pleasure to serve them. And through the process of the last 9 years, meeting, many of our customers and watching them use the system and watching them expand their business and all of that kind of stuff has been an amazing, amazing journey for us. Similarly, on building a business, we're now about 260 people at Wave. Probably over the course of the last 9 years, maybe something like 600 people, have come through our doors and worked at Wave. And the experience of meeting new people, watching the level of talent continue to rise in the company, the amazing people I get to work with every day who are smart and passionate and want to make a difference. Like, those two things have been by far my favorite part of the journey. Is just the people we serve and the people I get to work with every single day have been kind of a revelation for me.
Remarkable. And, coming back to the adventure theme, you started some adventure-based businesses, and then you started a tech company that helped entrepreneurs. Tell us where you see adventure showing up in that journey.
Oh, great question. I think, for a bunch of us, those that get drawn into the adventure space, oftentimes it's a cliche, but it's kind of the adrenaline that drives you into it, and just that feeling when you're kind of pushing yourself in a way that feels uncomfortable. And, when you get past that, it's just this feeling of joy. And I think in a lot of ways, I would just say the last 9 years, in terms of the adrenaline and the adventure of building a startup that's raised, close to 100 million of venture capital and scaled super quick. And so many times, I was uncomfortable through the process. And that brings out, the most learning, the most, you've got to be constantly trying to get better and keep up with where the company, if your company's growing at 100% year over year, if you think about that, you need to be growing at 100% year over year in order to keep up with the way the business is growing. And so that's been an incredible, incredible journey. And I think, I've never really thought about it in the way that you asked the question, which is really, really interesting. But I really think it's been the adrenaline of trying to keep up, the adrenaline of trying to improve and get better has been the strongest touch point between those two things.
Yeah, definitely. I can see it is an adventure. And I mean, anybody could go through the same experience and say it was a horrific nightmare. And some might say that was an awesome adventure. And I think, just having worked with so many bookkeeping business owners and seeing their day-to-day adventures, really, it's not always enjoyable, but it's what makes like as you say, the learning is so critical. And the sooner we can, we're on this adventure, the sooner we can embrace the fact that it is an adventure. I think it's a context shift that enables all of us to embrace the learning and look for the learnings. I mean, we just had someone shared a setback in their business, and many of the comments coming back was, look, there's incredible learning opportunity here. Take that. This is what it looks like. It's not going to look any other way than this. So I like that you've brought that, and I definitely love the adventure angle, and also you're helping small business owners all over the planet take more adventures in their life by giving them a tool that helps them get away from the darkness of not knowing what's going on in their business finances, right?
That is true. But let's all be honest that at times the pain in the moment, it's easy to look back on it and be romantic about the fact that the learning was there and all that kind of stuff. But the pain in the moment is real. And we shouldn't gloss over that the people writing those comments are 100% right. There is a ton of learning, but also, there's pain in that moment. And the journey is dark at times, and it's with hindsight that we can sometimes see that made us better.
It's interesting you say that because, and I think this is a good learning for all of our listeners, because we deal with, and you deal with, small business owners who are going through those rip off the Band-Aid moments. And without empathy there, it can be very just damaging. And even in the comments that were made, there was a bit of like, suck it up, it's going to get better. But then there were a few comments where it was like, I get this, I've been there, it's painful, and I'm sorry this happened to you. Like that empathy, right? Having the empathy and making sure that it's that person that's struggling right now, they're not at the look back and laugh about it stage. And so with our
100% right.
With our clients, if we're coming at it, well, let's just rip this Band-Aid off and you're going to need to suck that up. It's hard. It loses the opportunity to have that stronger, more intimate relationship with somebody and saying, I'm there with you and we will get through this together. So I think it's thinking about how are we responding to when we see others maybe with setbacks, and making sure that empathy is leading, right? It's like, yes, you're going through this. Let's not glaze over it, as you say. It's a very, very important concept that I think I see often in this digital age, fast-moving text messages. We forget about the empathy. We gloss over it too often.
Exactly right. And the humanity of the fact that we don't want to necessarily feel like this, but we're human. And I will give an example of this. In, I believe it was late 2013 or mid 2013, we had to do a layoff. And, we had been up until that point a rocket ship in many different ways, and, to use a cliche, but everything was up and to the right. And we thought, and the people that were at the company at the time just thought it would continue to be like that because it had been like that up until then. And we had to do a layoff, and we had talked about it at the board level. And at the board level, it was very much a numbers conversation around, how much we were burning, and, we needed to make some changes and extend runway and all of those kinds of things. But for us, James and I, it was intensely personal, and it was not a numbers thing. Sure, the numbers were saying we needed to do it, but at the end of the day, it was deeply, deeply personal that we were about to break our bond with these people and disappoint them in a way that was, really right in our heart. We had sold them on a vision, and now we were going to let them down. And I remember on the day of the layoff that morning, there was one board member who called me and said, I'm thinking about you today. I've done it once before in my own life. I know how difficult it is, and I'm just thinking about you. And that one moment, really cemented our relationship. And as you said, created deep bonds in the fact that this is not a numbers conversation. This is a, human conversation. And I think those moments, to your point, of empathy and humanity, of understanding that a small business owner's journey is oftentimes very difficult, very lonely, and sure, in hindsight, we can romanticize it, but in the moment, they need just some empathy for what they're going through.
Exactly. Great example. And I think in this world of automation, technology, the message can often be that, all this stuff's just going to get taken care of our automated robots. But empathy and humanity can't be replaced by technology. And that's the value. That's the valuable part. So focusing on being that human being in the marketplace, helping small business owners, is an advantage, and it's is limited and scarce and is valuable.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Now, your software is helping over 400,000 small businesses every month. That's remarkable. What does our listener, because obviously there's incumbents in the marketplace that maybe more have worked with or used, but that's a lot of small business owners. What's the opportunity for our listener to be involved with Wave?
Yeah, so I think we are designed for that micro small business owner segment and very focused on giving tools to small business owners that are designed for them and not for accountants, where we're doing all of the right things behind the scenes from a double entry accounting standpoint and from an invoicing standpoint, a payroll standpoint, and payments standpoint, but that we are specifically focused on how can we empower brave entrepreneurs to take better control of their financial life. And that is how we design the software. And so if you're a small business owner in our segment that is looking for greater visibility, greater professionalism in sending out your invoices to your customers, tracking payments, getting paid faster, and accounting for all of it behind the scenes so that tax time is a breeze, and all the way along you have better insight into what's happening in your business, how can you make daily improvements on the performance of your business, we're the kind of tool that is designed to help you do exactly that.
Remarkable. And for a bookkeeping business owner, this software may be applicable to them using in their own business, but as well, do you have an ecosystem of businesses that are using this solution? What would be the best way for them to be introduced to Wave?
Yeah, well, I think the interesting thing about our model is that the invoicing and accounting software is 100% free. And so, you can easily create an account and start testing out the software and using it, and then figuring out, do you have businesses that could benefit from a piece of software like ours, and ensure that you've got a more easy to grasp understanding of business finances on both sides of the equation, and get customers who are typically potential shoebox customers onto our platform and make that relationship easier.
I think it's important, I know that every bookkeeper would have a multitude of types of customers that are coming to them looking for assistance and help, and knowing, from micro right up to large business, what are the tools that are going to best fit that particular business. The more you know, the more tools you have in your tool belt, the more effective you can be. Right. And so I think that's the opportunity, is to understand and see. There's obviously, you're an award-winning application. You have hundreds of thousands of small businesses using it. A remarkable success there, and it's worth the time of investment and looking into and finding out how this can help their clients and where it fits for their clients.
Exactly right. And we are the first to say there are pockets of the market where the software fit is different. There are plenty, as we know, of customers where QuickBooks is a great fit. And then there is a tremendous amount of customers where Wave is built for that dynamic. The bookkeeper can be helping, the accounting, reconciliation, reports, all of that aspect, perhaps helping to run payroll, et cetera. And then the small business owner might still want to keep tabs on what's happening on the invoicing side and tracking payment and having that relationship with their customer through that. And all can happen seamlessly on the platform with permission controls and that kind of stuff.
Beautiful. Well, I know 10 years is a long time. I mean, for technology, it's like a couple decades in dog years or however that calculation works,
Yes.
right? So anyone that may have seen the product even, a couple of years ago, I'm sure there's improvements and changes and all sorts of stuff, just like every other piece of technology. So I think this is a nice refresher and reminder that, look, take a look at what Wave is doing and see where it fits for your client portfolio and potential new clients coming down the track. I would like to ask a little bit about, because I think it comes up a lot, is you mentioned you're a co-founder a few times, and having a partner in a business. I mean, starting a business by yourself is one thing. Starting it with another person, it's like another marriage happening in your business. What has that journey been like, having a partner in your business? And what are some of the things that you did to make sure that that was a healthy relationship for the long term?
Yeah, so I think, I've got the benefit of having lived through multiple different stages of that relationship, meaning that, we started the business together in 2009, got serious about it in 2010. My co-founder was living in Calgary at the time. We're based in Toronto, and he ended up moving to Toronto with his family. And then in 2015, he left the day-to-day operations of the business and remained on the board. And then we sold the business in summer 2019 and continue to operate it as a standalone entity. So I've seen many different permutations of the relationship. I've seen it at its best. I've seen it in the moments where it's challenging. And so I would say that, to your point, that the macro is that, it is very much like a marriage. It requires, nurturing and care and attention. And I think, in a rapidly scaling business, I think one of the things that we learned along the way is role definition is really, really important. Understanding who is going to make the call on what, who's going to ultimately make the call on what is really important. Because the danger is that, you end up compromising, and compromising is sometimes good and sometimes dangerous. And so what you want to avoid is just compromising in areas where you're getting to the path of least resistance, but it might not be the best answer. But it's where, you're getting less friction in the relationship. So it's a bunch of different things. And ultimately, my co-founder and I are still great friends. But we definitely saw all the ups and downs of, managing that relationship. And it's complex and complicated.
Absolutely. I can imagine. And it's one of those things, you've grown like you would grow in your own family and the marriage that you have. You're growing in this business. And I think a key word there is care and attention. I think that is paramount. Often, again, coming back to the busyness of life, we forget about the care and attention many of our relationships need, to sit back and go, yeah, look, it needs nurturing, it needs attention, it needs care. It's not an app that just you click and push a button and everything just works the way you expect it to work. It needs that care and attention. And not only with our business partners or family, but as well our clients and customers and people that we work with on a day-to-day basis. Really interesting.
And ourselves.
And ourselves. Absolutely. Absolutely. I noticed on looking at your LinkedIn, you started a company called the Sustainability Network. And the only reason I noticed that, the word sustainability, there's two things I would be interested in. Is just, it seems like you've brought a lot of you into your business, perhaps into the culture of your business. What is the Sustainability Network? And did you see some of that show up in your business down the track?
So I should put a caveat. I did not start the Sustainability Network. I was a board member for a period of time on there in that business. I would say that sustainability, for me, has not been as much of a theme as other aspects of myself that I've brought into the culture here. I think that obviously that topic is massively important. I think the benefit of a tech business is that your environmental impact is low. It's not like we're printing CDs or boxes or those kinds of things. We obviously need to be focused on the electricity of servers and all of those kinds of things, because the tech space does, use a lot there, but we've seen good momentum around sustainability practices in data centers and that kind of stuff. I think where I've brought more of myself to the culture of Wave is after my first business went bankrupt, I had an amazing experience where I got my first job at the first media company, and I worked for a woman named Carolyn Meacher, who was remarkable in so many different ways, but she allowed me to be very entrepreneurial in the job at Key Media at the time. And that experience was very formative for me in terms of how she empowered me, how I was able to move the needle and be entrepreneurial without a lot of, politics or boxes to check. And so one of the things that's always been really, really important to me at Wave is just what is the culture that we're creating here for people to do their best work? And how do we remove some of the friction and politics and dynamics in people getting, an amazing work experience here? And so that's where we've been really, really focused. And I think a lot of our culture awards and that kind of stuff has come from the partnership, that I've had with Ashira on building a culture that allows us to really invest in the people that work here. And that is super, super important to me.
Lovely. I love that. And obviously working because of the remarkable results that your organization's produced in the last decade. My last question is just around passion. It's come up a few times. One of the things that we learned about you in terms of getting ready for this interview was that you believe that passion should drive or be a driving force that in their business. Can you say a little bit about that and how you've seen that over your last, your career as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, hard to quantify that. I think, all of us know that the journey is hard, that there are, we've talked about this, over the course of the last half hour, like there's tons and tons of roadblocks. And I think that passion often brings a level of grit and optimism and resilience that is just quite frankly required to overcome some of those challenges. I remember along the journey just a couple of specific times where it just felt like it would have been easier to give up. And the line is very, very thin and gray, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs around where is it delusional to keep going and where is it, smart and required to keep going until you can make the transformation. And as I said, that line is very gray. We went through it in mid-2015 where we were very close to bankruptcy. And it was just clear to me that, we needed to do whatever it took to just keep going day by day to try and right the ship. And I think that's where, if I wasn't passionate about it, if I wasn't, deeply committed to it and resilient through some of those challenges, that I think it would have been easier to just give up. And I think that's where passion and grit and resilience is just so important, is to push through some of those dark moments. But my concern always when I tell that story to small business owners is, as I've said, it's very, very easy to be such a believer in your idea that you're not looking at the outward signals and making good decisions about your future, which may at the time actually be to fold up shop until such time as you can find something else that might, work better. And I think, I found that twice in terms of where we had to give up. And on Wave, it just was clear to me that if we could get through some of these challenges, we would, get to the other side. And that's where, as I said, I think passion, resilience, grit, surrounding yourself with others who have those same characteristics and are up for that journey is just so important.
Well said. There's no direct route to a successful business, and lots of pivots. And a great book written by Seth Godin is The Dip, which is when to know when to quit. And so it is that gray. It's a gray area, and there's no, it's just great. So you've got to take inputs, intuition, and all these different things, but into consideration. But the message that I hear loud and clear throughout your journey is financial clarity is paramount, and that's what our listeners do for their clients, is to provide, and that's what your software does, is, are you selling hot dogs for $1 when it's costing you $1.30 to produce them? And if that's the case, then, you can help that business owner say, look, you need to sell your hot dogs for $1.75, right? What's really going on in financially, and when you combine financial clarity with an entrepreneur's passion, I mean, we can avoid some serious pitfalls for sure, and that's why it's been a pleasure having you on this episode. Is you're helping small businesses. Our listeners are helping small businesses, and small businesses. When we help small businesses, I mean, great things happen in our communities.
Exactly right.
Beautiful. Well, I know, Kirk, that many of our listeners are going to be looking to learn more about Wave and learn more about you. And on behalf of our listeners, I want to thank you for generously giving us your time and sharing your journey.
It's a pleasure. I appreciate speaking to anyone who's helping small business, and that's certainly the case with your audience. So it's been a true pleasure to be here.
Beautiful. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.